boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Dan Rafael. The World Boxing Council announced that it will sanction Javier Fortuna versus Jojo Diaz for the interim lightweight title after receiving a request for it in light of Ryan Garcia's decision to take time off. Garcia no longer has the interim belt. Fortuna versus Diaz winner is the mandatory challenger for the Haney versus Linares winner. Haney versus Linares, which is set to go down this weekend. And I want to say something here.
What do you want to say?
A lot of time in the sport of boxing, today's postmodern sport of boxing, a lot of time is spent talking about fights that we all know ain't going to happen no time soon. As mouth-watering a fight as Haney versus Garcia is, or Garcia versus Fortuna was, those are fights that aren't going to happen.
They're not.
And we can sit here lambasting Ryan Garcia for taking everybody for a ride.
A lot of people aren't buying his mental health bullshit.
The same way that a lot of people right now aren't buying into Tyson Fury's mental health narrative, the narrative we've been hearing about the last 3 years.
Yeah, people aren't buying that shit either.
Let's not get away from the point. There's going to be a time to assign blame, assign culpability to Ryan Garcia for skipping out on a solid fight with a solid fighter. There's going to be time for that. There will be a time and a place for all of that. But here today, in light of the WBC's ruling, the real news here is that this is a very respectable succession of fights with a respectable selection of fighters for young Devin Haney, who is not accepted in some circles as a bona fide true blue champion. Some people look at him as an email champion, a paper champion, because he was elevated to that status in light of Vasyl Lomachenko's franchise designation, a designation that has since changed hands and is now in the possession of Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo is viewed by some as the true blue WBC champion in spite of not having won the WBC world title from Vasyl Lomachenko, and it's because, well, Vasyl Lomachenko didn't have it. He gave it up for the franchise designation. The world title went to Devin Haney.
That's just the truth.
Those are just facts, as they are. The story is that the people over there at Top Rank petitioned to get franchise status for Vasyl Lomachenko ahead of that Teofimo Lopez fight, and he lost that fight. We know what happened, but if Teofimo won anything from Vasyl Lomachenko, as far as the WBC goes, it was franchise status. In spite of this, there are many people out there that are of the opinion, as it is not a matter of fact, simply a matter of opinion. There are many people out there of the opinion that Devin Haney is not a bona fide champion, and he still has yet to legitimize himself by facing solid opposition. I'm a fan of this weekend's fight. I like the Linares fight.
Solid fight to me.
As is the Fortuna versus Jojo Diaz fight. This affords Devin Haney a unique opportunity to silence the naysayers by amassing a more solid resume than Ryan Garcia, certainly a more solid resume than Gervonta Davis, who's still living off that victory many years ago over Jose Pedraza. That still is the most solid victory on his resume. Closest thing to a 50-50 fight he's ever been in.
The rest is just fluff.
Devin Haney is very much part of that generation of fighters. Teofimo Lopez, Gervonta Davis, Ryan Garcia, the new kids on the block, as it were. Devin Haney has had an air about him, a buzz, that he is a top prospect, blue chip kind of guy. And while he has that air about him, in terms of substance, that's what's missing. The meat and potatoes of the thing. This affords him the opportunity to get that meat and potatoes on his resume. Solid wins over solid fighters. Forget about social media call-outs. Forget about name-dropping guys' names in interviews with different interviewers. That ain't how you do it. If you want to silence the critics, if you want to silence the naysayers, in this sport, you've got to show us, not tell us. When news broke that Ryan Garcia was going to be taking on Luke Campbell, the feeling was, the popular opinion was, that Luke Campbell is a more solid fighter than anyone you'll find on Devin Haney's resume. And Devin Haney's supposed to be a world champion. He got elevated to that status. But here you have Ryan, a contender, fighting a more solid fighter than anyone that Devin has fought so far. Well, this weekend, Devin Haney's going to be taking on the guy that beat Luke Campbell before Ryan beat Luke Campbell. A more decorated guy than Luke Campbell was. More decorated guy overall in Jorge Linares. Former 3-division champion, Jorge Linares.
How do you like them apples?
And the buck don't stop there. For those who might not yet be satisfied with a potential victory over former world champion, former 3-division champion, Jorge Linares, Devin Haney still has his work cut out for him. That is, if he intends on keeping that WBC title, he will have to defend it against the winner of Javier Fortuna versus Jojo Diaz.
Another good fight.
There's just far too much talking these days. Far too many sound bites, far too many interviews and social media call-outs, just a lot of smoke, a lot of mirrors.
A lot of fluff.
What leaves a lasting impression, what captures the imagination, are the fights themselves, and there really is no substitute for that. There's no amount of social media call-outs and Twitter beefs that are a substitute for the actual action. That's what stays in people's minds, their hearts, their memories. And that's what Devin Haney has to get out there and do. He has to get out there and fight. And this is the perfect opportunity because Ryan Garcia's stock has taken a very critical hit. Whatever buzz was around him post-fight after he stopped Luke Campbell in sensational fashion.
He killed that buzz.
With all of this mental health stuff, this I'm not mentally fit to fight stuff ahead of what was supposed to be the Javier Fortuna fight. There's a lot of people that ain't buying that shit. It's just not a good look because if the story checks out and Ryan is having genuine mental health issues at this time, people will question his intestinal fortitude moving forward. Is this guy cut out to be a professional boxer? And if all of this was a ruse, if all of this was just a cover story he used to get out of a hard fight that was more trouble than it was worth financially, if that's what this is, then he looks like a ducker.
Not a good time for Ryan Garcia.
But a very good time. What could be a very good time for Devin Haney to swoop in and take care of business the way that Ryan didn't want to.
A genuine opportunity here.
And I hope that Devin Haney and his people capitalize on it as best as they can. Do the job that Ryan didn't want to do for whatever reason.
So then you look at it and you say they just wanted to use me, probably, and Matchroom as a scapegoat all along. Don't worry, look, we'll look like we were interested, but Eddie will never deliver this fight. Not at the moment, not in this pandemic, not in this environment, no chance, don't worry. Eddie delivers the deal, it all breaks down. And my God, where's your bollocks, Tyson Fury? Like, if you really wanted this AJ fight, you have not said anything negative about this situation. You have not said how disappointed you are. You have not looked at your promoters who clearly could have terminated this contract a long time ago and go, what have you done? You've just cost me not just probably $50 or $60 million, you've cost me the chance to fight the biggest fight of all time, the undisputed fight, because you've dropped the ball. And if you haven't dropped the ball, why are you not fighting this? Why are you not trying to come up with a plan B? You're just going to give up. Because you can't be that bothered if you're just going to give up and roll over. The whole thing stinks.
For a tweet from Michael Benson, Tyson Fury himself had this to say. He says he's still 100% confident that he will fight Anthony Joshua in 2021. 100%. It happens this year. I'm going to deal with this mug, Deontay Wilder. I'm knocking him out cold, and then I'm going to deal with the other guy straight away.
Sure.
Does Tyson Fury, here today, look to you like a guy, strike you as a guy, that just lost $75 million? Because that's what he is. That's essentially what he is. Unless the purse amounts for Wilder versus Fury 3, the guaranteed purse amounts, are anything to the tune of $75 million up front, the way they were for the Joshua situation. Tyson Fury is a man who has just been costed a ton of fucking money. And this same guy that has just been costed this big ton of fucking money, he's doing cannonballs in the pool.
He doesn't look like a guy that just lost $75 million.
You tell yourself that maybe Tyson Fury is in such good spirits because he's supremely confident that lightning can strike twice. That what he did to Deontay Wilder in their second fight, he's confident he can do to him again in a third. You might be telling yourself this, but look at the situation.
Look at it.
Tyson Fury, in his own words, he felt robbed after the first fight. He felt that the judges robbed him of the decision. In the second fight, he didn't leave it to the judges. He took Wilder out.
Right.
He's already fought this guy 2 times, and now he's set to fight him a 3rd time, except this time, it's costed him $75 million.
That doesn't bother you?
It doesn't bother you that you're set to fight this guy again for a 3rd time when you were en route to score your biggest place, your biggest payday with the guy you swore up and down to the boxing community at large you'd smash. A guy you said didn't want nothing to do with you. That guy.
Anthony Joshua.
It doesn't bother you that Wilder is getting in the way of that for a fight that won't make you as much money as the Joshua fight would have. It doesn't bother you that a guy who you believe, at least in your own words, you beat the first time and destroyed the second. It doesn't bother you that now you have to deal with this guy all over again, except now it's costed you $75 million?
It doesn't bother you that he slandered your name?
Doesn't bother you that late last year he
Accused you.
imparted a video message accusing you of foul play, accusing you of fighting dirty, cheating, perhaps loading your wraps, loading your gloves with some foreign object? None of this bothers you, that this is the guy that's getting in between you and $75 million. None of this bothers you. You know, when I heard Deontay Wilder's message late last year, I thought to myself that this is grounds for a defamation of character suit for Tyson Fury, that if Deontay Wilder, by some chance, attempts to push for a third fight, one way out of that fight is a defamation of character suit. It's an avenue that was not explored. That whether Deontay Wilder were seeking damages for the third fight having not happened at that point, or, you know, he was pursuing a third fight, he wanted a third fight, perhaps the Fury people, his legal team, could pursue a defamation of character suit that could exonerate him of having to fight Deontay Wilder for a third time. This appears to be an avenue that was not explored.
Tyson Fury doesn't seem bothered by any of this.
None of it. And this isn't just getting my attention and your attention. Eddie Hearn, it's got his attention as well, that nothing in terms of resistance has been offered up by Bob Arum or Tyson Fury to fight this ruling, to fight this decision by way of the arbitrator, Daniel Weinstein. Outside of Bob calling the ruling preposterous, they don't seem to be objecting to it very much. I mean, they're not appealing it. They're not perhaps pursuing some kind of an extension.
Nothing.
Tyson Fury doesn't seem broken up about it at all. Tyson Fury, who's never at a loss for words, he's not saying much about it. Hell, he seems on board for the third fight.
Doesn't look like a guy who just missed out on $75 million.
Doesn't any of this strike you guys out there? You guys, doesn't it strike you as odd that Tyson Fury is rather jovial as opposed to being broken up, that Wilder's costing him $75 million?
It's pretty odd.
The more interesting soundbite of Eddie Hearn's recent interview with IFL TV is that, according to Eddie, they could have ended this entire situation, this entire contractual agreement or disagreement or whatever it is. They could have ended it in December, sometime late last year. But they chose to carry on with this situation. I think a lot of light needs to be shed on that.
There are some very difficult questions that need answers.
Neither Bob Arum, Frank Warren, or Tyson Fury have made any attempt to work around this ruling. They're not even really objecting to it.
And maybe it's because this is what they wanted all along.
Why are you not fighting this? Why are you not trying to come up with a plan B? Just going to give up? Because you can't be that bothered if you're just going to give up and roll over. The whole thing stinks.
And just in keeping with the theme of news coming by way of Matchroom, Eddie Hearn has stated that Alexander Usyk is the most likely next opponent for Anthony Joshua on August 21st or the 28th, possibly at Wembley or Spurs Stadium. Other options include Dillian Whyte, UK rematch, or a US trilogy fight with Andy Ruiz Jr. Mouth-watering options. There is a audience, a market for each one of these individual bouts, though ultimately, if Anthony Joshua wants to remain the unified champion that he has been, in all likelihood, it will be Usyk that he fights. Eddie Hearn revealed that Andy Ruiz Jr. DM'd him asking for an Anthony Joshua trilogy after the Tyson Fury fight collapsed. Hearn said, "It's like deja vu. He Instagram messaged me. I'm ready. Let's do it. AJ versus Ruiz Jr. 3. That's a fight we'd be interested in." And if I'm being honest, as a spectator in this spectator sport, I actually think there's a precedence for Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz Jr. to fight for a third time. However, it should not come at the cost of one of Anthony Joshua's alphabet titles. If he fights Andy Ruiz next, he'd have to sacrifice the WBO title to Alexander Usyk, and I'm not sure if Anthony Joshua is prepared to do that. I think that there is a precedence for a third fight with Andy Ruiz Jr. because Andy and Anthony Joshua both won their respective fights with each other in one-sided fashion. Andy Ruiz's dramatic knockout of Anthony Joshua in their first meeting, and the thorough masterclass that Anthony Joshua put on in their subsequent rematch. I think there is a precedence for a tiebreaker. It's just not here. It's just not now. I honestly give Anthony Joshua very good odds against Alexander Usyk, if that is to be his next fight, and I think it will be, because Alexander Usyk's run in the cruiserweight division really was an epic run, unprecedented. But there are a lot of people out there that are looking at Usyk through rose-tinted lenses. This is not the cruiserweight division. He's looked less than remarkable his last two fights, and if he's pushing for this fight so hard here and now, it's because he knows Certain danger awaits him in every single fight, every time he steps foot in that ring as a heavyweight. In a situation like that, you want the most rewards.
The most you can get.
That's why we're hearing rumblings that Alexander Usyk is asking Eddie Hearn for more money. Listen, I think Usyk is a great fighter. I think he'll go down in history as one of the best cruiserweights the sport has ever seen. But I also think Usyk, Alexander Krasiuk, they don't have any illusions about the situation. The heavyweight division is a very dangerous mistress for Alexander Usyk here now. They can't afford to take on keep busy fights with guys that might smoke Usyk off a single shot, off a single hard shot that lands. And that's the threat. That's the peril that's unique to the heavyweight division. One punch can change everything. And Usyk, he wasn't a big puncher in the cruiserweight division. He was one of the most skilled boxers with the most accuracy, the fanciest footwork, lots of agility, a lot of good qualities. But power, that wasn't one of them.
Not gonna be able to dance around all of these guys.
I feel like Alexander Usyk and Alexander Krasiuk are ready to cash out.
Why take a chance on Joe Joyce?
Philippe Pergovic, Dillian Veit, why take a chance on any of them? Granted that there are paydays there, paydays to be had, but none in comparison with the payday he'd stand to get from Anthony Joshua. That being said, I understand the logic here.
I get it.
They want the most rewards for the risk they are taking, and rest assured, the heavyweight division is a risky mistress. It's all risky business for Alexander Usyk.
You know, some people still rate this guy on their pound-for-pound list.
On the premise of things that Usyk did 3 years ago, because it's been roughly 3 years, close to it, that Usyk has campaigned as a cruiserweight. He's looked less than remarkable since then. He's not a champion anymore, but they're still looking at the guy through rose-tinted lenses, whereas for Usyk,
He can't afford to do that.
I still view him as a legacy fighter the same way I did before, with the difference being that the only fight that really makes sense for Usyk here and now is the Anthony Joshua fight.
Fiscally and physically.
Because he really can't afford to play around up there.